Welcome to Terror in Tandem, a podcast about finding entertainment in the macabre, hosted by the knowledgeable and lovable Laura Mathiasen. Just kidding.
And Richard.
Hosted by the knowledgeable and lovable Laura and Richard Mathiasen.
Thank you.
Each episode we discuss the horror genre, from books to film to TV and beyond, sometimes even from the beyond. You can find us online at terrorintandem.com and on Instagram at terrorintandem.
Yeah, keyword there being us.
Yes, right. I'm sorry. We are co-hosts.
Entirely too early in the run of this podcast for you to usurp me.
When I go out and have my own episodes, Laura's Locker. That's where I unearth secret recommendations that I watch without you.
I honestly wasn't worried until you said Laura's Locker, and now I think I might actually be screwed. Like a podcast producer is going to come up to you and be like, you got to drop this dead weight.
Right, like a lead singer. Oh,
yeah.
Your band is holding you back. I mean, I don't think that's the case. So, hi, everyone.
Hey.
Welcome.
Welcome to our modern reference show.
Right. Yeah, where we only talk about references from the 2000s or the 20 zeros. Not 20 zeros, but the 2000s. I never know how to say the year 2000s.
In the year 2000. I think the aughts.
Yeah, I hate that.
You do?
I do.
Do you call them the noughts?
I call them the year 2020.
The ooze?
Right, the Zeds.
The double O's? Yeah, so welcome, everybody.
Hi, we're going to talk about sea monsters, you guys.
Yes. Today is a little bit of a departure from what we've done, where we're not necessarily talking about a particular person or a single, or recommending like anything. We're going to talk about more of a concept.
We're going to go deep. We're going to deep dive on the depths of the deep sea.
We're taking a deep
diving.
dive in a deep dive.
Yeah, we are. We're getting our suits on and checking that oxygen, and we're going to go down.
Getting our self-contained
below.
underwater breathing apparatus.
So many leagues.
I can't wait. So we're talking about aquatic horror today. The fear of the open ocean and what lies beneath. I think it's a primal, ancient fear that's been with humanity as long as we've had fears.
I would say that the probably most pop culture fear-based ocean is Jaws.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
You know,
I mean, the tagline was just when you thought it was safe to go back in the ocean, or maybe that was Jaws 2.
I think it's like
in the ocean, no one can hear you get bit in half by a shark.
The animatronic shark is gonna get you.
Yeah, that was it.
You'll never go in the water again. That's what it is. Okay.
You'll never go in the water again.
So the Jaws tagline from 1975 is "You'll never go in the water again."
And that's presumably because the
Of
water
Jaws.
is where Jaws is.
Right.
Jaws is in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. That's really. I bet you the Ocean Services Department.
The NOAA?
Yeah.
National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
They were probably like,
Well, actually,
hello?
it's funny you should
Or
mention
maybe you
that.
shouldn't go in the water because you pollute it so much.
No, that's true.
Like, can we get some cruise ships off the water?
So Jaws was based on the novel by Peter Benchley, who was the son of the famed oceanographer and conservationist Robert Benchley. So after the movie Jaws came out, it kicked off a wave of hysteria against sharks, not just great whites, but all sharks. And sharks typically don't attack human beings. It's quite rare. And this caused an overfishing problem. And Peter Benchley greatly regretted that.
Yeah.
He spent decades after the movie campaigning for, against that very thing, overfishing of sharks or fishing of sharks at all, really.
So that like is a really great segue into, fears around the water. I mean, we're talking about Jaws briefly, but it's really about, are you afraid of the ocean? Are you afraid of water? Maybe you're afraid of a shark attack, and that prevents you, or you associate it with a fear of the water. So we are going to talk about, monsters of the sea, but I did want to talk a little bit about where that fear comes from. So,
yeah, you got to start with the environment.
Thalassophobia.
Okay.
It's an intense phobia or fear of large bodies of water.
There is a word for everything you can be afraid of.
If you have thalassophobia, you might be afraid of the ocean, the sea, or large lakes. So it could be really anything. Some people deal with a little anxiety about the ocean just in general.
That would be me, I think.
But for others, being afraid of the sea can be like physically debilitating.
Wow.
If the fear is so persistent, it can affect your way of life. Like you have to be landlocked. You
got to live in like Kansas or something. Yeah.
Any large bodies of water, you know, you could completely have panic attacks.
I can understand that for sure.
The word, which is interesting. So the etymology of the word thalassophobia, it comes from the Greek word thalassa, meaning sea, and the word phobos, which means fear.
The god of fear.
Yeah.
Phobos. Yeah. Son of Mars.
So scientists have proven that there are many different ways in which someone might develop a fear of the ocean. Bad experience with water could lead to a fear response and phobia. So you could develop the thalassophobia from that. If you had a bad experience near drowning. So with that in mind, I wanted to just talk a little bit about any bad experiences you might have had.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
In the ocean or a large body of water.
Yeah. So when I was, I think, maybe like 8 or so, I was playing in the ocean off the coast of Florida with my dad and my little brother. And we had these like foam boogie boards that we got at like a stand. They're like styrofoam. It was the 80s, I'm sorry. So I was riding this wave in, and the tip of the boogie board got stuck in the sand, and the wave crashed over me and flipped me, and it broke the board in half. And then another wave hit me, and I got just sucked under, pulled under. I didn't know which direction I was in. I was spinning. I was absolutely panicking, had no idea which way was up, which way was down. And I was at the mercy of the waves. It was I think maybe my first real experience with insignificance, how powerless you can be. And then, a hand shot into the water, grabbed me, and pulled me out. And it was my dad saving my life. Not for the last time, but yeah. Well,
what's striking to me is when we were growing up, we weren't. I took swimming lessons. I went to the Y.
Oh, same.
And I went all the way to like junior lifeguard. Like I was a really good swimmer.
I was a good swimmer too.
So it was sort of, I wasn't really. We weren't going to go into the ocean unless we could swim.
Yeah.
But nobody teaches you how to like survive or escape the undertow. Because my bad experience is similar. I was in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Our hotel was actually on the ocean, which was the best part of that trip.
That's pretty cool.
Because the rest of it, I thought we would go to Busch Gardens. I was like 10 and my brother was 12 or 13. Why wouldn't you take us to Busch Gardens?
Yeah.
No, we went to Colonial Williamsburg.
Oh my God.
For summer vacation.
Oh, and that's
so
even
hot. But
better.
I did get to see the first female blacksmith.
Nice.
So
did you get to see them like when they're on break smoking cigarettes and talking in modern language?
No, because
That's
I
my
just
favorite
was
part.
trying to not, I think I bought one of those like antique hand fans.
Yeah.
Because it was summer
little
in Virginia
warm
Beach,
in Virginia,
in Colonial Williamsburg.
Oh
so
my
anyway,
God.
we
Imagine
got a
thinking you're going to
day
Busch
off.
Gardens.
We got a day off from
Holy
historical boredom, and we went to the ocean.
Here's how we made candles.
And I was swimming, and I got caught in the undertow as well. And you fight it. I mean, that's your instinct.
Of course.
It's your survival instinct, but you're really just supposed to like go along the edge, go with the current. You know, you're supposed to stay calm, which again, that's the problem with sometimes having your life in peril. Even like if you get in a car crash, you're really supposed to relax.
Well,
so
the
that
more
you don't stiffen and break more bones.
And the more you fight underwater, you're using more oxygen in your blood, so you can't stay under as long.
But your fight or flight instinct kicks in, and it prevents you from relaxing. So
thanks, brain.
You're supposed to relax. So that was one of my first experiences, and also I had another. I mean, this isn't the ocean. But I was walking with some friends across the Cohoes Falls. There's sometimes when there's a little bit lower water pressure, you can walk across the falls.
That's in like central New York?
Yeah, in upstate New York.
Yeah.
And there were these, a best way to describe is like a crevasse. So you'd had to walk along the ridge, and I slipped and got stuck in one of those crevasses.
Oh, shit, really?
And all the water was
story.
flooding over my face. My friends had to pull me out. So I also remember like almost being waterboarded for a minute. But none of our parents knew that's where we were for the day. I really don't remember how old we were, but we couldn't have been more than 15 or 16.
Yeah.
Just totally irresponsible.
Getting waterboarded by Mother Nature.
Yeah. So, although I'm not afraid of the ocean, I didn't develop, thalassophobia. I am definitely cautious.
Not to be confused with phallosophobia.
I'm definitely not afraid of that.
Oh.
So, like I said, there's a couple of ways that you could develop a fear of the ocean. The bad experience. We've both had bad experiences. Are you afraid of the ocean?
Me?
Yeah.
I am. So I'm certainly intimidated by the open ocean. I've been out in the open ocean. I grew up on an island. Well, I grew up on Long Island, which is technically an island, but I feel like if you say you grew up on an island, it sounds like the
It's
Bahamas
very exotic,
or something. Yeah,
but,
no, Jesus.
When there's a Blockbuster, it's not as exotic.
Yeah, I grew up on the beautiful tropical Long Island. So, but I grew up on the coast. I've been around water my whole life. My grandfather was in the Navy, so he took me out on the water a lot, and so I'm used to it. But being out on the open ocean, when you are in the water and you can't really see what's below you, and this is especially true if you're not that far from the coast and it's a little murky, man, your mind just goes to the worst possible scenario. And my personal fear is I'm more afraid of things that can stick to you, like jellyfish, man-o'-war, being swarmed by something just creeps me out. I would rather be eaten by a shark than swarmed by poisonous jellyfish. There was a scene in, it's not a great movie, but there's a scene in Sphere from the 90s where Queen Latifah gets killed by jellyfish, and it fucked me up, man.
I definitely don't like walking on the ocean floor when it's sludgy or slimy. Yeah, there's always you're nervous.
Well,
you
get a
caution.
venomous jellyfish stuck to you, and if you touch it to wipe it off, it stings you there, and it's just like a nightmare. It's like napalm.
But if you think about it, when we were more vulnerable, like as kids, we just ran right into the ocean and just went at it.
I feel way more vulnerable now.
Well, we were vulnerable then, but you feel more vulnerable now.
Yeah.
So we're more cautious, I think. So you can develop thalassophobia with a bad experience. Thankfully, Richard and I did not have one, but you could. You can also develop the phobia without experience or trauma. So, genetic factors.
Really?
Yeah, a 2015 research review suggested that anxiety disorders such as having specific phobias may be inherited to a moderate extent.
So not only are anxiety disorders themselves familial, but the specific fear can be passed down? You got to be kidding me. So, like, you could fuck your kid up just by being afraid of something?
Think about, like, if you had, like,
that just
over cautious parent that, you know, was like, oh, be careful, don't drown, don't touch that, oh, jellyfish can bite. Like, wouldn't that make you afraid? It's not your experience.
I don't have to use my imagination for that scenario.
Environmental factors. So if you hear about someone experience a traumatic event in the ocean or a large body of water, such as drowning, it could contribute to you developing thalassophobia as well.
Sure. I guess, and like any trauma, you can develop it by witnessing it. You know, I mean, if you see somebody get eaten to shit by a shark, that'll probably give you a fear of the water.
Also, if your brain has a dysfunction in processing fear, it's easier for you to develop a phobia like thalassophobia. So you could have multiple fears, and that could be one of them.
Just have a brain that is chemically
unable to
like
understand,
a
what
hyperactive
you should be afraid
amygdala
of.
kind of thing. Yeah. I feel like I fucking
when
have
you're
one
in
of those.
danger, you know, when you're not.
Yeah. That seems familiar.
Another contributing factor specific to thalassophobia might be a fear of the unknown. So that's sort of what you were talking about, like being out in the middle of the ocean, not being able to see land,
I'm
not
actually
knowing
get
what's
into that
below.
A little later.
When you don't have enough information, you can't control the situation or environment. It can cause fear and anxiety, which I'm sure we're all familiar with coronavirus.
Tied to the fear of the dark, I'd say.
Yeah.
Also, it's not so much the dark you're afraid of, it's whatever could be hiding inside of it.
Correct.
Yeah. And when you can't see your own feet in the ocean, my God, anything could be down there, just inches from you, reaching for you, you know?
Yeah.
Trench monsters.
Some people believe that, places they haven't experienced, their imagination takes over. And so that sets that irrational fear. Some scientists suggest that fear of the sea might be primal rather than irrational.
Well, yeah, actually, can I go into that a little?
Absolutely.
So that's what I find really interesting about fear of the ocean is water is inseparable from life. Our bodies are mostly composed of water. 70% of planet Earth is water. And I mean, you know, without water, we tend to die pretty quickly. We can go a lot longer without food than we can without water. So it's interesting to me to be afraid of something that you can't live without, that you wouldn't exist without.
But isn't it weird that if you're in the ocean, right, you need water to survive, but you can't drink that water?
You can't drink that water, yeah. Well, that's the thing about the ocean is it's very friendly to life itself, but not necessarily to individual life. The ocean doesn't care about your hopes and fears and dreams. It cares about the continuation of life. Now, according to National Geographic, roughly about 80% of the deep oceans remain unexplored, which that's a lot. So that's 80% of 70% of the planet that we don't know shit about. And unlike outer space, it's full of life everywhere. It's not just an empty void. The thing about life underwater is it is completely alien to terrestrial life. We went down different evolutionary paths. You know, we crawled out of the water, grew lungs and legs and all of that. But certain parts of the ocean are unimaginably inhospitable to what we think of as life, and yet they are teeming with life. There are thermal vents pumping out, you know, acidic chemicals, superheated water, and there's life around that. The Challenger Deep section of the Mariana Trench, which is estimated to be the deepest part of the ocean, that's almost 36,000 feet deep. That's higher than planes fly. And there's life down there. There are lakes that exist in the deepest sections of the ocean that are comprised of water and other elements that are heavier than regular seawater. So they kind of live as a sort of bubble within the ocean, and they have their own ecosystems with their own evolutionary paths. So what I mean is it's like literal aliens.
And if you think about the rising sea levels over time, that the earliest sea level has all of these inhabitants that live there and thrive there. And then, with sea level rising 12,000 years ago, there's new inhabitants in that level.
Exactly.
It's like a level.
Well, that's a very real concern amongst the scientific community as permafrost starts to melt.
What kind of sea creatures are coming?
Well, not just sea creatures, but the release of bacteria or viruses that humans have not encountered in 100,000 years, or maybe never.
I don't think we have any, concerns about viruses or bacteria.
Or climate, or warming climate, or anything like that.
I think we're fine.
Yeah, listen, just pop that hairspray.
Just keep listening.
Drive
to
your F-150.
Yeah.
Fuck it. So it's easy to be afraid of the ocean, I think, because it's that combination of darkness and alien life, and we can't survive there. Not without a whole lot of help, and even then, it's very, very dangerous.
And even after a while, you really can't,
No, you can't stay down there indefinitely. It has, like being in outer space, it affects you physiologically, but psychologically as well. You'll go nuts. They call that the deep madness. I don't know if they call it that, but I feel like they should.
Yeah, they really should.
That's pretty awesome. Deep madness, everyone. So, yeah, that's a little background on the ocean. Do you want to...
Let's take a little break.
Want to take a break?
And we'll be right back.
Okay. Friends, do you ever leave the bathroom with that not-so-fresh feeling, no matter how many times you've wiped? Do you wish cleaning out your beehole was just a little bit more exciting? Well, now you too can poop like the stars. Introducing Michael Bay's Bidets, the only toilet jet designed to clean your muddy starfish with a blast of slow-motion patriotic fervor. Simply finish your stinky business and activate the patented Optimus Primer, which will roll out and transform your back end from Armageddon to something with less duty on it. Every Bay bidet comes with a library of classic Michael Bay sound cues, such as car crashes on the 405, Nicolas Cage screaming in your face, or the flap of a tattered American flag waving defiantly against the odds, while over 500 jets of water polish your sinful nooks and crannies. Michael Bay's Bidets, guaranteed to leave you confused and kind of sad. May cause severe anal injury and cultural stagnation. This is a fake ad for a fake product on a horror-themed podcast. We do not condone nor endorse ruining your butthole with an overpowered bidet. And welcome back.
Yeah, let's get into some actual sea monsters.
Yes, enough about the water. Let's see what's in that water.
Yeah. So 20, there's an article I found, 20 of the most fascinating sea monsters from mythology to fantasy fiction.
Okay.
And some of them are pretty scary. But, like sirens are one, which we've all heard about.
Well, what's a siren?
A siren is sort of like an evil mermaid, female, typically. Comes from Greek mythology. Jason and the Argonauts and Odysseus, both. They are part woman, part bird. Actually.
Oh, yeah. Love that.
And they live in the ocean, and, they
like
lure
a lady with some feathers.
Sailors. So the common theme, though, of the sea monster genre and trope is that these fears were shared by fishermen and sailors because those are the explorers on the sea. Yep. So they developed lore and legends and used their imagination about the unknown. So we've already established that the unknown is frightening.
I think that the human mind it has a need to create stories and patterns to explain things that it otherwise can't.
Yeah.
And in ancient times, actually, much like modern times, our relationship with the ocean is that it gives and it takes.
Mm-hmm.
So when a ship would go out and never come back, and people on land would want to know what happened. There's no real way to figure out what happened, so they made up stories of women whose songs would lure men to their doom.
Yep. Or like even in Pinocchio, I don't know if you all remember Pinocchio, but Geppetto and Pinocchio were swallowed by a sea monster. Yeah. It was essentially like a giant sperm whale.
Yeah, it was like the story of Jonah.
Yep. So, even in fiction, there's always been references to sea monsters. And there are real quote unquote monsters of the deep.
Well, yeah. A lot of these ancient stories were just people trying to explain a real phenomenon they had seen in the context that they understood, which was a world of gods and demigods and mystery and magic.
Yeah. So there are some scary looking things in the ocean that if you saw them, I mean, like there's a viperfish and a vampire squid.
The lanternfish is terrifying.
Yeah.
What could survive, with the pressure and cold at 30,000 feet below the surface of the ocean? It's probably not something cuddly.
Yeah. I mean, the box jellyfish is, one of the most venomous animals in the ocean.
I don't like that.
Their tentacles are loaded with poison darts.
Can they shoot them?
They do. Like people and animals that encounter them booby trap laden strings. They encounter booby trap laden strings.
Oh.
So their tentacles.
They just sort of float out.
Yeah. You can become paralyzed, have heart failure, and die within minutes.
Like that scene in Finding Nemo when they're.
Yeah.
On that, yeah, look, it's a Pixar cartoon and whatever. This is a horror podcast, but that was scary.
Pixar.
That was scary. That is my worst fear.
The worst part, though, about box jellyfish is that there are 50 or so species
of box jellyfish.
Of just the box.
Is there a container store that is just box jellyfish?
Maybe there's a box to put a box jellyfish in.
God, sounds like the worst fucking thing in the ocean.
And only a couple, though. Only a couple of those species have enough venom to kill people. And they're found...
Are they all venomous, though? Just some of them...
The 50 or so species are not all venomous. Only a few of those species are.
Huh.
But, the hundreds of those...
Yeah, so it's like people.
Yeah.
Like, not all of us are venomous, but a few of us definitely are.
They're found in the Pacific region in Australia.
Everything that can kill you is from Australia.
The sad part is,
they
don't live in the deep water. They're coastal.
Oh, that's not sad.
No, that's scary. That's frightening as heck. That means that just be careful out there.
I am fascinated. I have family in Australia, and if you're listening, thank you, by the way. And I just picture their daily commutes as being one of like fighting off prehistoric beasts, just like on the walk to school. Just had to fight off a tiger. It just seems like even their insects are the size of Volkswagens.
I mean, the most important thing though is we don't want to destroy these real monsters of the sea because
no.
They contribute to the ocean's, ecological systems.
This is not a hunting podcast.
No,
this is a
But
be respectful and don't touch the poisonous jellyfish.
You can avoid.
Yeah.
You don't have to, or you can try to understand. Do you have any real life sea monsters that you want to talk about?
Thank goodness I did see someone get stung by a Portuguese man-o-war, which is a venomous kind of jellyfish, and the screams I'll never forget. This person just screamed and screamed and screamed, and they were in horrible pain. You could see the red striations where the jellyfish stung them, just growing on this person's leg. And,
scary.
there was a lot of commotion on the beach and people pulling this person out of the water and getting them to, and I was pretty young. So seeing all of that was, I think, put a bit of fear in me, for sure.
You really don't like going to the beach.
It's not my favorite place. But I mean, I think part of that is just because I'm mostly a vampire.
I mean, I have tents and umbrellas.
Yeah.
Basically, I need to go to the beach.
All right. Well, we can do that.
So what I wanted to focus on is to really explore those legends, those lore, the folk tales from the sailors and fishermen, and why sea monsters have penetrated through pop culture and literature and film. So I want to talk about the Kraken.
Oh, yes. Unleash it.
Yeah. So the Kraken is a myth which is as large and far-reaching as the imagined Kraken itself.
Well done.
Many of these imaginings were based on real life living things. Tentacles become a frightening sea serpent or a many-armed kraken. When the eye sees an image in the depths of the sea, the fear takes over, and then the imagination creates a monster like the kraken. So
like, you might only be seeing part of this creature, and your mind is just kind of filling in the rest.
It's enormous. Yeah. Like, it's only the tip of the kraken. Just the tip. You were going to say that too?
I don't know if I was going to say it. I think I was debating whether to say it.
Described in Scandinavia, stories dating back to AD 1180, the Kraken was said to live near Norway and Iceland. The Kraken was also part of Greek mythology, born from Oceanus and Ceto, both sea-dwelling gods. Made of large arms and tentacles, think giant squid and octopi. Which
is probably the
what
origin for it. Yeah. Some enormous cephalopod.
The sailors of old said that the Kraken symbolized subconscious and emotion. Like, typically the Kraken references your deep subconscious desires, as emotions can loom really large and feel overwhelming. Some early naturalists, such as Carl Linnaeus, believed the Kraken to be real. As recently as the 18th century, Linnaeus included the Kraken in his catalog.
So he thought that the Kraken, it wasn't like a giant squid, but that the actual description of the Kraken. Oh, wow.
The site of this
and you said, when was that? The 17th century?
18th century? Yeah, as recently as the 18th century. Yeah. The sight of the mighty squid-like beast grasping at fish, like they would see all these fish rising to the surface. Yeah. And they would go to fish them, and then they would uncover like an eye or a tentacle, and it would be this big kraken beneath, because that's how they were said to get their fish, is that the kraken would cover its body with fish, rise to the surface to lure fishermen, and then attack.
Oh my God.
I know. So scary.
Yeah.
So
imagine, being an ancient people, and a whale, the carcass of a whale washes up on the beach. It's the biggest beast you've ever seen in your life, and it's got chunks taken out of it and scars from sucker attachments, and you're thinking to yourself, what could possibly kill something this massive? A kraken. Yeah.
So that symbolically, the beast grabbing for fish in boats, it meant like a deep hunger and greed. So sailors would say that if a kraken comes, that means like, you're greedy, you're out for, you're overfishing, you're not good intentions.
It's the wrath
you're not there
Poseidon.
To protect, right?
Yeah, the wrath of the gods.
It's also been noted that it's a symbol of class struggle. For the Kraken represents the underclasses and has seen as emerging from invisible depths to take hold of the affluent aristocracy, represented by the ships and the royalty and royal money that allowed those ships to sail.
Yeah,
in the ocean.
Kraken, if you're listening, there is some work out there for you to do if you're bored.
Krakens have been said to have limbs so large they look like a ring of islands.
Wow.
500 years ago, sailors in Europe told tales of a monster with a snake for arms, covered in suckers, like you said. And they did find skin of whales, allegedly.
Yeah.
European sailors said that the Kraken would take hold of entire ships and toss them to the air. Dreams of the Kraken can be symbolic of a great summoning towards healing. You might be called to face subconscious fears when the Kraken comes to you in a dream. You might also have to reckon with which you fear that will consume or overpower you.
It's starting to feel like the Kraken represents basically whatever the fuck you want it to.
Yeah, right. Well, these are all the legends. These are all the legends.
And it's a legend that is thousands of years old. So it's been told across different cultures, and it gets adapted to whatever the
literature and film, which is, really where I want to, go to next, which is
let's do it.
The Kraken in literature and in film.
Okay.
So here are some, earlier mentions of the Kraken. So Alfred Lord Tennyson's 1880s sonnet.
Yeah, the Kraken. Yeah, that's an excellent poem.
Moby Dick by Herman Melville in chapter 59. The crew of the Pequod encounter a, quote, vast pulpy mast, furlongs in length, end quote. Jules Verne, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Oh, yeah.
A giant squid 25 feet long.
And really?
Heading towards the Nautilus.
Interesting. I don't think I've ever read the book, because in the movie version with Kirk Douglas and James Mason, it's a lot bigger than 25 feet.
Yeah.
That motherfucker is like building sized.
H.P. Lovecraft's The Call of Cthulhu.
Yes.
Last but not least, Clash of the Titans.
Hell yes.
And I'm talking about the 1981 version, not the 2010 with Liam Neeson.
Harry Hamlin?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Clash of the Titans.
He's very oiled in that film.
Is not a horror film, but I do recall
it has its moments.
Yeah, I do recall when I did watch this 7,000 times. I loved this movie. I still love this movie. So it stars Harry Hamlin, a very young Harry Hamlin, and there are gods. Zeus is there. Perseus, that's who Harry Hamlin plays, has to essentially figure everythh out. I mean, isn't that essentially what it's about? Perseus has to figure everything out.
He's in love with Cassiopeia, or Andromeda. He's in love with Andromeda, whose mother Cassiopeia does not approve. He fights.
He has to prove that
he has to
prove
worthy. His worth. So he slays he slays Medusa. He fights the Kraken.
Yep.
He plays Perseus in the movie, but he's more in a combination of several Greek heroes. He's kind of like Perseus, Bellerophon, Theseus, all sort of mixed into one. And there's a mechanical robot owl for some reason.
Oh, the owl. What is his name? Babu.
It's been a really long time. I don't remember.
Anyway, I remember watching this and feeling lots of fear when he crosses through the swamp. And it's like really ominous, and he hears all the sounds of all the fog. He can't see anything. It's really, I was really afraid of what would happen to him. And then when he finally does go get Medusa, she's scary.
She's terrifying. Yeah.
And the sounds that she makes, she slithers. She makes like a click sound.
And she's like a skittering.
Yeah.
And she's got the stop motion is all the done by the late great Ray Harryhausen, so it's phenomenal.
And Calibus the character Calibus,
Mm-hmm.
he was like the son of Theseus, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Theseus. He couldn't marry Andromeda, and he was like made ugly.
Yeah.
I remember being afraid of him as well. So I think that when we finally get to the Kraken, like that's the final monster.
Yeah, it's like the boss level monster of Clash of the Titans.
And he needs Medusa's head
Mm.
in order to destroy the Kraken.
And audience,
Because-
this is why when you decapitate your enemies, don't throw the head away.
He didn't.
You never know when you're going to need to pull out of a sack.
So he learns that, only the severed head of Medusa can destroy the Kraken, because everybody that looks at Medusa is turned to stone. So that's essentially what happens. Sorry, spoiler alert.
From a thousands-year-old myth.
So it's pretty awesome. It's Bubo, by the
Bubo.
way.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, like
The animatronic owl.
which makes it sound like you have Black Plague.
So that was probably the most notable, to me anyway, appearance and like a real fear-based visual representation of the Kraken.
Yeah.
In my earliest memories.
Oh yeah, for sure. And if you watch that movie as a little kid, especially, it's one of those wonderful movies of, if you watch it at a young enough age, it's entirely appropriate, but it has scenes here and there that maybe just go right up to the line, and that sticks with you.
And as promised, finally the Kraken rum. It's a 94 proof rum manufactured in Trinidad and Tobago.
Oh, okay.
And released to the U.S. in 2009.
No shit.
I promised I would mention the Kraken rum, as it is one of our listeners' favorite rums.
Is it?
Kraken rum. If you would like to sponsor
Not
any of
only-
these episodes, we would love to have you. Just drop us a DM in
We
the
are-
@Terror in Tandem Instagram page.
We're horror fans. We're Kraken fans.
We are.
We're raging alcoholics.
No, we're not.
It all comes to I'm my nickname in college was Toucan Sam, and
That's not why. It's because you
that's
like
not changed.
women with big boobs.
What? I thought for sure you were going to make a big nose joke. That went in a direction I wasn't expecting.
Get it though?
I guess, yeah, cans.
I mean, this is
sure.
all got to be cut.
No, because
When you said we're raging alcoholics from then on,
you know how I like to use words like cans or jugs or bazoombas.
boobos.
So
the booby boobos.
I'm going to jump in.
Wait, So yeah, that's the Kraken deep dive. And who are you going to talk about?
Well, I'm going to circle back a little bit because you briefly mentioned H.P. Lovecraft.
I did.
And any talk of aquatic horror has to include H.P. Lovecraft. So Lovecraft's most famous creation was probably Cthulhu. I think Cthulhu has really entered sort of mainstream consciousness at this point. He's a tentacled underwater dragon-looking thing. But to H.P. Lovecraft, Cthulhu was a slumbering dead god. It was sort of dead but not dead. And it lived in the city of R'lyeh, I think that's how it's pronounced, which was an ancient underwater city. And Cthulhu dreamed, and its dreams would affect the minds of people, of man. So
I'm going to be a little goober and admit I don't know much about Cthulhu.
nice.
So that's really interesting.
Allow me to illuminate you. Sagan. So the Cthulhu made his first appearance in the short story The Cult of Cthulhu. Now Cthulhu slumbers in its millennia-long sleep. It's an elder god from a primordial time when ancient cosmic beings came to Earth and ruled. Now they are scattered across the cosmos in other dimensions, but Cthulhu lives at the bottom of the ocean and sleeps, and his
Like
dreams make men go mad.
Like the Freddy Krueger of the ocean.
Yeah.
Of the
In a
ocean
way,
monsters.
Sure, yeah. So Lovecraft had a lot of phobias, had a lot of fears, and
Had a lot of problems with immigrants.
yeah. Well, so his fears of other people, of humanity, of basically everything that moved. He wrote these stories of ancient, unknowable cosmic gods messing with our minds and influencing us. You also had mentioned, and we've talked a lot about this, about the fear of the unknown. And H.P. Lovecraft had a very famous quote that the greatest and oldest fear of mankind, the greatest and oldest emotion of mankind is fear, and the greatest and oldest kind of fear is fear of the unknown. I'm paraphrasing slightly there, but so I'm going to jump in there to a couple of movie recommendations because that's just what I do. That's my thing. So branching out from the Kraken, just a couple of quick recent movie recommendations if you're interested in underwater horror or aquatic horror. So a few years ago, a movie came out starring Kristen Stewart called Underwater. It was directed by William Eubanks, who's kind of new on the scene. He just did the most recent Paranormal Activity, Next of Kin. So Underwater it's surprisingly very, very good. Kristen Stewart is a deep sea scientist living in an underwater, deep ocean facility, and it gets attacked by something and turns out to be this massive, unknown creature. And it's a movie where they imply a lot more than they show. And I think it might be rated PG-13. There are only a couple of moments of blood, but it really uses the claustrophobia of being in a facility like that very well, kind of like the original Alien, and a lot like a spaceship. Being in an underwater facility, you are at the mercy of, the walls that surround you. You are surrounded by pressure and any cracks in there, and you are going to pancake.
Yeah, like The Abyss definitely had that same crushing
100%.
Panic fear.
That's next on my list.
Oh,
Abyss on my list. No. It's perfect. This is perfect. So the next movie I was going to recommend is The Abyss. It's James Cameron from the early, I think it's 1990 is when it came out.
Ed Harris,
Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, the great Michael Biehn. So it's a great movie. It's probably
not to
more
be confused with Mr. Bean.
Right.
Michael Biehn is not Mr. Bean.
No. So
it's like
this was it's a bit more sci-fi than horror, but it does have elements of horror in it. It really does play with the alien environment of the deep sea, of the dangers of pressure. And there's a specific scene with Michael Biehn and the pressures of the deep sea that really stuck with me. It's just terrifying being that deep down. Also, if you want to see a breakthrough in special effects before Terminator 2 changed the landscape, The Abyss is where James Cameron really started to pioneer the use of CGI. And it's dated, but not as much as you'd expect. It holds up surprisingly well all these years later. And as a bonus, if you've ever wanted to see someone brought back to life purely by screaming and getting slapped in the face, this has that too. There's a wonderful scene where Ed Harris manages to revive somebody just by screaming really loudly in their dead face. So medically accurate.
I mean, even the word abyss has a lot of historical or a lot of meaning.
Yeah, Nietzsche said if one stares into the abyss stares back.
Yeah, it's like both a physical and a intellectual.
Yeah, it can describe the depths. It can describe the absence of something, a void,
despair,
darkness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, even the word itself,
and again,
is a fear connotating.
The similarities between outer space and the deep ocean.
Is it connotating or connoting?
Yeah, you know what? It can be both.
Okay.
I'm calling it here. I've heard it both ways. So the last one that I'm going to recommend, I'm just going to actually list off a few quickies. A couple movies from the 80s that are a lot of fun. They're maybe not the best movies ever, but Leviathan and Deep Star 6 are some good ocean creature features. Leviathan, I think, had Peter Weller in it, who was the original RoboCop.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty good, actually, but it's definitely a solid B movie. It doesn't take place on the ocean, but more recently, The Lighthouse by one of my favorite directors, Robert Eggers. It's sort of loosely based on a true story of two lighthouse keepers who were stranded for months and months past when they were supposed to be picked up, and one of them died, the other one went insane. This movie it's hard to define. It is certainly horror. It's also, I would say, a comedy. There are moments that are absolutely absurd and hilarious, but Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe give just powerhouse, career-defining performances for two actors who are already incredibly talented. They are at their best. It's a slow descent into madness. There's a lot of allegory and imagery around seabirds, the albatross, the seagull, tentacles, mermaids, things like that. Just all of the old tales of the sea seem to get brung up as these men go mad in isolation.
It's in black and white.
It is. It's also in a square frame too. So it's an interesting watch.
Not something that I've watched.
No.
Robert Eggers, I know, is one of your favorites.
He is. The Witch, The Northman. I just appreciate what I see as a unique vision making films today. There's really no one else doing what he's doing. Going back to the Kraken, one of Bong Joon-ho's earlier films, The Host.
Oh, yeah.
Bong Joon-ho,
that was scary.
Famous for Snowpiercer and more recently Parasite. The Host was a great creature feature from South Korea back in the 2000s, 2006 maybe, I want to say.
2013.
2013, really? Oh, wow. Gosh, I was way off. No?
No. There was a 2013 movie with Saoirse Ronan called The Host, but that's not the same.
That is not what we're talking about.
No.
We're talking about the South Korean film, The Host, about a sea monster. It's also a great...
2006, you were right.
I was right, as I usually am.
So start over.
The Host, it's also a very interesting and I would say salient commentary from a South Korean perspective on the American presence in South Korea.
Can you say the South Korean name of the actual movie?
I can't, because I do not speak it, and I'm not going to attempt it. Can you?
Guomo?
Sure. Yeah, check it out. I mean, obviously, there are the old classics, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Jaws. There was a movie a couple years ago called Sea Fever, came out of Ireland, that was really very good. Had some real goopy, gross stuff in it, too. Yeah, those are my movie recs. You can't go wrong with any of them, and they are, all of them, very wet.
So think about your
Moist.
earliest memories of being in the water or the ocean.
Like the womb, being in
that's an interesting
amniotic
point.
fluid.
I mean, we all come from
Speak
the
for
water.
yourself.
And
I was hatched.
until you're born, everything's really unknown.
Yeah, you're up in that goopy sack. Do we want to cut that?
Yeah, we
Okay.
do. We don't
No.
want to talk about wombs right now.
Goopy sacks? Okay.
Or anybody's wombs. So think about your earliest water memories.
Do it. Do it right now.
You know, what does it scare you? Is it something that has been, explored?
I mean, it's clearly not just the two of us, because people have been afraid.
All of these movies and film,
Ancient tales,
all
myths.
these movies and literature recommendations, all these folk tales, all these myths.
People were telling stories of sea monsters before writing existed.
Now we know there are actual real sea monsters, and those are even frightening. So
yeah. Oh God. I mean, check out basically any documentary about the deep sea. You see some creatures down there, and we share a planet with them that are just utterly alien from us, a completely divergent evolutionary path.
But we need them. We
do.
need the sea monsters.
It's a connected ecosystem.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We should definitely stop fucking it up as much as we are. No matter how many monsters are lurking in the depths.
Are we the monsters?
Something to consider.
Well, thank you, everybody, and
Yeah.
we'll see you next time.
Oh, thanks for joining us. Terror in Tandem is written, produced, and recorded by Laura and Richard Mathiasen, and edited and mixed by Richard Mathiasen. Our theme was written and performed by Carrie Denver, and all other music was written and performed by David Suspanic. All opinions expressed on this podcast are our own and should be taken as such. Thanks for listening, and please remember to give us a like, a review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. We're standing right behind you.